A is I escape and get my freedom. B is I get them to kill me and I still get my freedom.
Please subscribe to our channel and turn on bell icon to watch more real true crimes around the world. After deliberating less than an hour, a Dare County jury recommended late Monday afternoon, October 28th, that Mikel Edward Brady II be sentenced to death for his part in a failed escape attempt at Pasquotank Correctional Institute in Elizabeth City. Brady, who admitted to being the pack leader during an earlier first phase of the trial, spent parts of 2 days on the witness stand, explaining how he and 3 other inmates for several months planned, trained, prepared backpacks, and then assembled supplies and weapons for what turned out to be the deadliest prison escape attempt in the history of North Carolina. Brady also calmly provided intimate and gruesome details on how each of the victims were stabbed and beaten to death because he had to do whatever it took to escape. Tina Hicks gave birth to Mikel Edward Brady II when she was 16, a sophomore at Whitcomb High School in Bethel. She had dated Mikel Brady Sr. since she was 14, and he was 21. Tina said she saw early warning signs in her eldest son. He started counseling at 7, after he told a teacher that he knew how to end his life. At 10, he struck his 8-year-old sister with a knife during a game and blinded her left eye. He was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and resisted taking his medication. In 2002, when Mikel was 12, Tina said his father and uncle were stabbed to death defending a relative in Connecticut. Young Mikel took the loss especially hard, his mother said. He began acting out, mouthing off to teachers and fighting, according to his sister. He had his first run-in with the law at age 14 when he stole fishing gear from a garage. When a teenage Mikel brought home cash for groceries or helped with rent, his mother took his word that he was hauling scrap metal for a local salvage yard. Later, she learned her son was part of a drug and burglary ring responsible for 100 break-ins. In 2008, he was arrested on federal charges for stealing 209 sticks of dynamite from a rock quarry in Bethel. In 2009, he took part in a home invasion in South Royalton in which the victim suffered a severe brain injury. He was charged with more than 30 crimes over several years, including assault, burglary, and possession of explosives. He fled to Mexico before being captured, extradited, and sent to prison in 2009. Mikel was released in 2012, not long after serving his minimum sentence. A judge cited his good behavior in prison. For a bit, his life in Randolph seemed to have turned around. He worked at a butcher shop, played in a softball league, and took his medications. His girlfriend became pregnant with his son. The photo his mother showed off was taken during this happy interlude. The good times didn't last. Mikel was caught attempting to poach deer. He fled Vermont, camped in the woods of Maine, and then moved to North Carolina. When a state trooper there pulled him over for a seatbelt violation in February 2013, he shot the officer 4 times and left him for dead. The trooper survived, but in 2014, Mikel was sentenced to 24 years for attempted murder and other charges. This led to his incarceration in Pasquotank. Brady worked in the warehouse of the sewing room in the prison, which gave him access to tools like hammers, scissors, and saws. He had considerable freedom within the prison, stating, "I could go anywhere I wanted to go, no questions asked." That's when Brady, along with some of his fellow inmates, came up with a plan to escape the prison. The plan to escape was his idea, and he began planning it 3 months before the actual attempt. The escape was supposed to happen 2 weeks later than it did, but Brady believed another inmate had discovered their plan and was going to turn them in. Brady was able to make backpacks and pants from materials in the sewing room, and even managed to create spears out of supplies in the warehouse. He did all this right under the noses of the officers. On the day of the escape attempt, Brady and 3 other inmates tried to carry out their plan. But the escape didn't go as planned. The weapons they were holding were used pretty well, because they ran into the prison workers and guards along the way. And when Brady saw them, he was not holding back, because their lives or anyone's life would never be important enough.
Possibilities that I wanted to happen on this thing. A is I escape and get my freedom. B is I get them to kill me and I still get my freedom.
Brady ended up killing not just one, but 4 guards in that prison on his way to the fence to climb it out to freedom. But the guards swarmed him, and he didn't get any farther than the fence. But what he ended up accomplishing was making things infinitely worse for himself by becoming the merciless killer who ended the lives of the prison workers who were only there to feed their families.
She had turned and she started to scream. That's when I punched her in the face. When I punched her in the face is when she fell down to the floor.
The jury took just 35 minutes to declare Brady guilty last week. He was convicted on 4 counts of first-degree murder and 10 other charges related to an escape attempt in October 2017. 4 prison workers, Veronica Darden, the sewing plant manager, Jeffrey Howe, a maintenance worker, and correctional officers, Justin Smith and Wendy Shannon, all died from injuries they got during the escape attempt. According to North Carolina law, capital murder trials must have a separate sentencing phase to decide between 2 possible punishments: life in prison or death. During the closing arguments this past Monday, District Attorney Andrew Womble started with a quick overview of the destruction caused by Mikel Brady 2 years ago. Womble continued to say that Brady, who was 28 at the time and had a long criminal record in Vermont, was serving a 24-year sentence at Pasquotank for the 2013 attempted murder of North Carolina Highway Patrolman Michael Potts. Brady used his position of trust to trick 3 people into a brutal and cruel death and killed a 4th person who walked into a planned and coordinated event. They were not human beings to Mikel Brady, said Womble, with photos of each of the 4 victims lying in pools of blood projected on a large overhead screen. They were not mothers, fathers, brothers and sisters or sons and daughters. They were just objects between him and freedom. They were things to get past. Continuing his closing arguments, Womble told the jury it would be asked to consider several mitigating factors, but he felt that beating someone to death with a claw hammer outweighs everything. He then asked the jury to consider the message a verdict would send to people working there every day. Mikel Brady didn't just attack those 4 employees, added Womble. He attacked a principle, a system, and our belief in the rule of law. If Mikel Brady is to live out a life in prison, it will be open season on correctional officers. In his closing remarks, which lasted 47 minutes, defense attorney Thomas Manning recited a poem to the jurors: "As the twig is bent, so goes the tree." He also mentioned that Brady grew up in a family where physical and emotional abuse was common until his father was killed in 2002. Manning painted Brady as someone who had developmental challenges from a young age and needed mental health treatment and medication, which the NC Department of Correction did not provide. Furthermore, 2 doctors testified that Brady's post-traumatic stress disorder influenced his decision-making and that his lack of medication affected his thinking. Manning also pointed out that the conditions at the Department of Corrections and the lack of proper supervision contributed to Brady's ability to plan and carry out an escape attempt. He emphasized, "The blame does not stop with Mikel Brady and his actions. The failure of the Department of Corrections must be taken into account." Following detailed instructions from Superior Court Judge Jerry Tillett, the jury returned in 52 minutes with a unanimous verdict that Brady should be sentenced to death for each of the 4 murder counts. If there was less than unanimous agreement, Brady would have been sentenced to life in prison. Brady, partially hidden from view by members of a Public Safety Adult Division, Special Operation Response Team, and local law enforcement officers, appeared to sit quietly with little or no emotion as Judge Tillett read the jury's recommendation and confirmed a recommendation of death with each member individually. Till it then announced that the sentence was death and that Brady was to be transported to Raleigh for execution. Manning and co-counsel Jack Womack noted an appeal, and the case will now go to the state Supreme Court for review. For his other charges of felony assaults, attempted murder, attempted escape, and burning a building, Brady was sentenced to 410 to 547 months in the custody of the NC Department of Corrections. After the trial, most family members of the victims, jury members, and Brady's defense lawyers declined to comment. Those family members who did speak said they were relieved that this part of the story is over. 3 other inmates involved in the 2017 escape attempt, Weiser Buckman, Seth Frazier, and Jonathan Monk, are charged with similar offences and are scheduled for trial after the first of the year.
We're extremely pleased with the outcome of this case. I think that they saw this case for exactly what it was, and they rendered the appropriate judgment and sentence in this case.
Womble said there was a reason Brady was the first of 4 inmates facing charges in this case to go to trial. And while he was not surprised by the short time it took to read a guilty verdict, he did expect the sentencing verdict to take a little bit longer, simply due to the number of questions that had to be answered. Brady's conviction makes him one of 143 offenders now on death row in North Carolina. 3 offenders are women. The last execution in North Carolina was in August of 2006, and legal disputes have since led to an unofficial moratorium. Thank you for watching this video. Like and subscribe for more videos. See you in the next one.